Hi everybody and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. I'm Jason Barnard, the brand SERP guy, today with Ed Trifone. Hi Ed, how are you doing?
Good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you very much. A quick hello and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Ed Trifone.
Wow, impressive.
I know you work at Brightray Publishing with our friend Scott Turman. And I can see the fundamentals of brand SERPs for business behind you there on the shelves with all the other books you publish.
Yep, one of our best books ever. And the guy we wrote it with, though, could be a little difficult, as you might imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine. My ex-wife told me that as well. Today, we're going to be talking about leveraging your personal brand to boost the sales process. I'm hugely interested. You've helped us at Kalicube with our sales process and our sales calls, and it's been hugely effective. And I know you know a lot about selling, but you do it in such a nice, kind, positive manner.
Well, that's key, because you're the kind guy you're a helper, and I'm a helper, and we have commonality. I think part of that is our great senses of humor and our good products that we really believe in, that we're passionate about, and our belief that we have something that others can use to further their business. And so because that we have that commonality, I think that's a big reason why we click. And that's a big reason why sales reps are successful or not. It's a matter of how well they click with their prospects and ultimately their clients.
All about relationships, which is something I know, but I always find difficult to actually get to grips with. And the other thing you said is we believe in our products. And something I think you said to me was somewhere along the line, if I truly believe my product will move your business forwards, I'm doing you a disservice if I don't sell it to you.
Right. That's one part. The other part is if you're trying to push your product or service on someone who you don't click with, or they don't necessarily need it. Because ultimately, when they use your product or service, and if it's a long production process, and you're realizing that this person is a fit, you don't have that commonality, it's gonna come back not necessarily to haunt you, but the production team or who you pass that client off to. But the first thing you said is doing a disservice to someone who could benefit from the product, but might not necessarily know it. And that's our job, to identify their pain points, but then offer the solutions as to what our product or service can do for them.
Brilliant. And I mean, from my perspective, not coming from the sales world, I always thought, selling, it's being pushy, but it's not. It's finding the right match between what we offer and what you need, and the way we work and the way you need your partner to work with you. And it's about relationships. And one thing that strikes me is exactly that. If it isn't a good fit over the long term, everybody's going to be unhappy. So you've got to make sure it's a good fit. Before we get into that, though, and specifically leveraging your personal brand, my personal brand, to boost the sales process, I always look at brand SERPs. And here we've got your brand SERP. And I looked in Orlando, and unfortunately, Scott's photo is above yours on your brand SERP when we search your name in your own town. And that's because on Brightray, you're all on the same page together. And you were talking about commonality. And that's one of the things, is the about page is where a lot of people go to see, do I relate to this company? Is there a resonance? And am I going to have commonalities with them? Your about page is great. It presents everybody. The only problem you have here is Scott is above you on your own brand SERP, which is a pity for you, not for Scott. Then we look at Brightray, and lovely knowledge panel. I know Scott is really into this, and he's been taking the knowledge panel courses at Kalicube, which is amazing. And he's doing a great job. You've got the social profiles, you've got the name of the company, and I know that Scott's building that out with the description and different aspects of it, like the founder date and the founder name and potentially the CEO. And then we look over on the left and we can see a lot of adverts, Google ads, because of the word publishing. And that's a huge problem, and I'd never really thought about it like this, is if you have the name of your job or the name of your service in your company title, you're always going to be competing against a lot of other companies not because they're particularly trying to get on your brand SERP, but because there is a keyword in your name.
Sure.
There are solutions to that, but we won't go into that today.
Right.
And certainly if anybody's interested in that, please do join our Knowledge Panel and Brand SERP support group on Facebook. Just search for Kalicube support group on Google and it will send you right through and you can join up. And we discuss knowledge panels and brand SERPs day in and day out. And I love it. So Ed, I've looked at Brightray, I've looked at you. It's actually very good. How disappointed are you that Scott is above you on your own brand SERP?
Well, it tells me there's work to be done on me.
On your personal brand.
Right. And that's why you have been so kind to work with me. And I recognize it's a process. It's a work in motion and it doesn't happen overnight. You know, as Americans, we all want it now, but it just doesn't happen now. There are several things that I'm sure you've touched on through your many podcasts or when you're working with prospects and clients that I still need to do. That's going to help better position me. And
you've done some great photos though. I mean, I tried to do some photos, then I looked at yours. Yours are loads better than mine.
Well, it's because I'm much better looking, Jason. So.
Of course. and that's part of it. It's getting the right photos, the right description, the right title, the right information, and consistently distributing it around the web. And that's what we're going to do with you. But you're going to build your personal brand because you want to help with your sales process. Right. Now, I think all you need to do is wear a red shirt. That's my personal brand. Sure. I'm sure everybody buys from me simply because I wear a red shirt. How true is that?
It distinguishes you. And just going back to the photos, what I did is I realized I needed to portray myself more as a professional. Part of what I do is, besides selling, is storytelling. I'm a publishing consultant. And I've certainly have given speeches across the country for various positions that I've held. But I haven't been able to hold on to those pictures through those years. So what I did is I hired a photographer to do a photo shoot one morning just for a few $100s. Mm-hmm. And I got some great photos in different scenes that I could then drop on into my website and in that you're able to utilize. Because as we know, it's the old adage, a picture, tells the story of 1,000, words and all. And so people want to look at me and see, do I have tattoos all over my face? Am I clean cut? Because people want to work with and ultimately buy from people they can relate to. No. So if I'm not portraying myself as a professional, because we work with C-level executives, founders, highly successful business people, and if I'm not relatable as portrayed through my photos, that's working against myself. And this all ties into what my personal brand is that carries over to what Brightray Publishing is trying to accomplish.
Right, and there's a question. Do you know what your personal brand is right now? And if so, how long have you known?
That's a tough question to answer. I think I could say my personal brand on a personal sense is a father, is a husband, is all that. On a professional sense, I'd say one sense is I'm a sales rep for this company, but is that who I am? Are those the characteristics that best define me? And so what I like to think is I'm a relationship builder. I'm a connector. I'm a problem solver. If you have a problem or see an opportunity that you want to capitalize on, then my brand is someone who can solve that through writing a book. Because what I explain is everybody wants to distinguish themselves, to build credibility. And that's why we all have LinkedIn profiles. Yeah. Most of us have our bio on their website. But not everybody has a book to tell their story, to control the narrative, to build their personal brand, or in some instances, the brand of their company or their service or product. And so to answer your question, I'd say my personal brand is a helper who's a publishing consultant who wants to help people further tell their story. Does that answer it for you? You think that covers it, or am I missing something?
No, it doesn't. It leads me on to another question is, to what extent is it important that the person you're talking to on a sales call understands that is your personal brand?
I think it's key. Because if I'm just trying to come across and sell wares without creating commonality, without doing my homework, I don't let you utilize LinkedIn or Google to send messages or necessarily identify prospects. What I do is see who they are, to find out what I would have in common with them, to offer that as a start. Because if I just jump right in and make the assumption you need my product or service without setting the stage and trying to control that conversation to a certain degree, it's like leading that dance. The last thing you want to do is lead your wife or girlfriend or dancing partner into the wall. You want to gently direct her where you want this to go. And in a sense, that's the same thing with the sales call. And when you dance with somebody, you just don't pull them onto the dance floor. You introduce yourself politely and say, hey, do you want to do this with me? Hey, do you want to learn more about my product?
Right, which makes a really good point, because I learned from you very much that I should lead by asking questions and then shut up and listen.
Right.
And that was something I wasn't doing, was listening to what the other person wanted. I wanted to explain to them what I thought I could do for them, rather than allowing them to tell me what they needed and then rephrasing what I was saying or reframing what I was saying to be the solution to their problem, if I have it, of course.
And I think it was almost, in a sense, the conversations we had about your need to make that adaptation was changing your personal brand, in a sense, because you have a very warm and engaging personality. You know, when I've seen you in groups of people, you're in the center, you're telling stories, you're connecting with people. And I don't think people are put off by that. But if you're trying to sell your product, you have to, like you said, ask a question and then be quiet. And we all have that want to be known, to be heard. And like I said to you, sometimes there's going to be that uneasiness after asking a question. There's going to be some dead air. But what I told you to do is curl your toes and just wait and see what the other person says and have your next question ready.
Right. Yeah, and it's so difficult for me that I've broken several toenails in the last 2 months, but I made a couple of sales, so that was worth it. So coming back to the personal brand idea, we're talking about how important it is for people to know, or at least partially understand, our personal brand to see if there's commonality. If I've managed to push my personal brand out, am I going to expect people to then come towards me even though they see no commonality, or can I count on people coming towards me because they understand I can help?
I think you have to be more proactive. There's so much noise in the world, whether it's through email campaigns, advertising, making personal pitches, phoning people. Again, you have to find that commonality. What's the most common way for someone to show their personal brand? It's not as common as now as it was in the day, but your business card.
Right.
And people would look at that. In Japan, they take a very close look and try to determine the quality of that card. What's the weight of the paper? That sort of thing. And if you go back, remember in the day, people thought the fax machine was an incredible thing, that they could send out faxes with their brand name on it to distinguish themselves. And then it became, you could send messages, through beepers, and then email came on, and you realized over time, or the technology caught up, that you could insert your logo. And then when you could insert attachments, and then web pages and all. And so technology has been terrific in that regard. But what technology has done is taken away from the opportunity to share your personal brand with your prospect, with other people who might not even know what it is you do, and really come to the conclusion that you have a service that could be to their benefit. So I think the key is to not rely so much on technology. Go back to the old how to win friends and influence people. Right. And it's all about understanding the other person, listening, creating the commonality, as opposed to relying on technology. The technology is great to establish who you are, to build your brand, to show you have a digital presence, which builds credibility. But that's all for naught unless you're willing to stick your neck out there and greet and talk with people and engage with them.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. And so kind of from your perspective, you're saying if I meet you, give you my business card, there's already some kind of connection. We can see whether or not there is a commonality, at least in terms of that immediate impression that you get of people. And the more we move into technology, the easier it is to communicate. The more we communicate not sparsely, the more we communicate with everybody, but pay little attention to what's in the communication.
Right.
Sorry, I mean, you can expand on that. That was a statement, but a question at the same time.
Yeah. Let's get away from communication. Let's talk more about your brand. When I first entered the arena of medical sales, I had a very unique product that physicians, primarily plastic surgeons and dermatologists and podiatrists, were our targets, but very difficult to get through and pass the gatekeeper. And so one of the things that I did is I had sugar cookies made by the dozen, and I had our company's brand, our product's brand, printed on the actual cookies. Everybody likes cookies, especially ladies generally who are sitting behind that desk all day long. They can dip it in their coffee, or they can snack on it before lunch. But I would say these cookies are for you. They're not for the doctor. So you hold on to these. If you want to share them, great. But what I'm hoping in return is if you get me in to see him for 5 minutes, that's all I'm looking for. So that was the start for me. And then with some medical practices, you had to bring in lunch. And so you'd brand your lunch, whether it's the napkins or you'd have on the cartons your brand. And then it became, in the States at least, you had to bring in not dinners, but you'd have to have dinners at fancy restaurants to get doctors. And then it became a matter of sponsoring trips where doctors could earn continuing ed over a weekend where they might only have 2 hours of classes. And then ultimately the FTC came in and said, are you really selling your product, or are you trying to, I don't want to say prostitute yourselves in your brand, but anyways, what was happening is you're getting away from the personal relationship building. You were relying too much on novelty items, including the pens and pads of paper, instead of engaging with people, finding that commonality.
And swag is this thing in the industry and in industries in general. But somebody once said a couple of days ago, everybody loves swag. I hate swag.
Yeah.
I was traveling around the world, and the reason I don't like swag is, number one, I had to carry it, and I was traveling around the world with a backpack, and it was heavy. And number two is, even when I get home, it sits in a corner I never use, and it just seems a total waste. Right.
It's got to be something that's practical, something that you can use. And, not to promote Brightray Publishing, but one great piece of swag is a book. Because like I said, it's going to tell your story. And a paperback is light enough. And if you don't want to carry a paperback, you can download the ebook. But there it tells your story. And you don't expect necessarily your prospect or your readers to read your book cover to cover. They might thumb through it. They might look at the chapter heading to find out what makes you different, what makes your product something that can solve their problem. But it's right there. It's quick, it's easy, and it's cost effective, as opposed to having by lunch after lunch after lunch,
or a weekend away,
dinner, or weekend and weekend. But how much does that allow you to engage and really educate your prospect?
Right. That's a really good point. I mean, I've got the book, and you can see it behind me, The Fundamentals of Brand Search for Business. And it's actually kind of a manifesto of what we're trying to do at Kalicube. And what we are now starting to realize is that we need to give it to prospects so that they can start to engage with me. Somebody we're working with, a guy called Igor, who's pretty smart, was saying people need to spend in one way or another 7 hours with you before doing business. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, and a lot of times what it says, it's always been known, you need 7 touches before somebody's going to buy from you. But I think what I said earlier is we're all busy, but there's so much noise. And as far as we go, it's pretty quick to determine if someone's interested, if they see the value in writing a book, because I can keep doing those touches, which I'm not going to say is a waste of time. Someone might be the perfect time right then and there for them to write their book, but I'm still going to make those touches. But it's just not phone calls. It's just not emails. It's doing other things. I remember when I first started out in sales, people would send one shoe with a note, let's get running together on this. Give me a call and I'll send you the other shoe.
Right.
One of the touches that we have right behind me here is a video greeting card that we'll send to prospects, that you open it up and there's a minute-long message about what we can do for you, and then it contains our explainer video. So we'll send that out with a book, or we'll have some of our clients send that out with a book, and it separates them. It's another piece of swag, but what people find is, wow, this is unique. This sets them apart.
So swag, physical items are still hugely valuable in terms of communicating with the client, potential client, before engaging with them, and to project your personal brand.
Yes and no. We were at a trade show here in Orlando a few months ago, in like any place, people will hand out the eyeglass cleaners. That's something practical that I use with the logo, but I don't need any more pens. I don't need pads of paper. What people are using for swag now is go to my website, watch my explainer video, watch my podcast, read some of our blog postings. That's swag has become more elaborate, more specific in digital. This is your expertise. You can look at someone's SEO and tell you what's working, what's not. You send out swag, or you hand out swag at a conference or during a client visit, and you have no idea how successful that's going to be.
Right. I mean, so swag could also be a quick analysis of your brand SERP and what it's possible to do, or a quick analysis of the 30 most important references to you online.
Right.
Would that count as swag, or is that?
Yeah. It's a
obvious
value.
a sales pitch. Sorry, go ahead.
It's a value. I would at trade shows, going back to the cookies, I'd rent a little oven, and after lunch, I'd have my oven going with the smell of fresh chocolate chip cookies. Well, that's value. People want to have a snack and something sweet, so they'll stop by the booth. And what's the value? Well, the value is, to me, that I'm going to get to engage with them as I'm pulling out a cookie and ask them those questions. And it's also going to be on that cookie wrapper, the napkin, my logo. And so, again, it's distinguishing me. But if I'm not utilizing that swag, to qualify someone, to ask them those pointed questions, to identify their pain points and what solutions we can bring, it's just all a waste of time and money and resources.
Right. So just giving the swag there's no point. You need to actually engage and talk to understand better who you're talking to. You exchange business cards in the real world. What would the equivalent be online, with that idea that I need to give them something, talk to them, exchange, figure out if there's commonality?
Right. I think for us, our blog postings, and you were terrific when you said you have to pose those articles with a question, because most people have never written a book, but most of us think we have a story to tell. Oh gosh, I should write a book. But you have no idea what that involves. A lot of people think, well, I've got the story. I'm unique. There's somebody out there who'd want to publish my story. Well, those days are long gone. And it's pretty difficult to do that, because you have to use a literary agent, have your manuscript written and shop it around and all. And so what we provide is, here's how it can be done if you're interested. And understand this isn't a quick 2, 3, 4 month process. It's going to take 6, 7, 8 months, if not longer. And if you considered how you're going to do the layout, how you're going to do the book cover design, do you know the specifics that you need to follow to submit this to Amazon for print on demand, and then to utilize Kindle as an ebook? And people will read that and say, wow, that's a value. I never really thought that through. And then the hook is, well, to find out more, let's have a discussion. I can explain to you what your book can do for you, how our process works, and determine if we're a fit to work together, to collaborate. Because again, if you want to pick and choose to the best of your ability, as best as you can, who you want to work with, to create that synergy, that sense of collaboration.
Right. And to what extent do you put your personal brand into the blog articles? I.e., to what extent are people going to understand who you are, Ed Trifone, as opposed to what Brightray can do?
Sure. That's an excellent question, and it's an opportunity. I'm not doing that enough. That's something I've thought about doing. I've started to do. But I think where my personal brand really comes out is when I'm on the phone with people or on a video call. But you're right. And I know one way I can do that, one way a lot of people are creating those blogs, is through ChatGPT, which really isn't cheating. But just while I'm on that topic, a lot of people think ChatGPT can write their book. Well, they're going to be able to write your book with what's on the public domain, but they're not. A ChatGPT isn't going to be able to write the story about your personal insights, the behind the scenes experiences, the trials, tribulations that you had. And the other thing, it's not going to keep you accountable.
Right. Yes. And then you get lazy. I mean, we all do that. And with blogs and with books, the problem with ChatGPT or, giving it to even a ghostwriter with whom you don't engage during the process is that it loses your personality. So your personal brand is not projected at all. And the whole point of the blog or the whole point, a huge point of the blog or the book is that people get to know, in my case, me a little bit better, and I draw them closer to me if we have commonality.
Right. You're exactly right. And they're going to look at your book cover. They're going to see your color scheme. They're going to see your face. And in a quick snapshot, they see what your book is about. And that's key. You talk about swag or content. That's going to entice people to want to find out more, to open the book. They might read the introduction. They might drop back to the conclusion. They might thumb through it. A lot of times, as you know, people will go right to that table of contents, like I said. And so if your book isn't written well and they jump to a chapter and see this is poorly written, people are going to say, well, that's an indicator of who Jason is. If he's not that detail orientated, how good is his product? So again, that book, any bit of your swag, if you produce pens and hand them out and there's a misspelling, boy, you just wasted a lot of money. So it's all about that personal brand, being authentic, being true to who you are, so you can project through the different avenues, especially digital, who you are, to make that commonality, to make that connection, to create interest that someone would want to find out more.
That's a brilliant conclusion. But the real conclusion is going to be that you answer one or both of these questions.
Sure.
How does branded search help with the sales process? Or how does the sales process help with branded search? Off you go, Ed.
Sure. Well, I think it comes down to who you are, who's your personality. I think all the technological, the digital presence, your Google business card, just supports that, because you have to present yourself through that as to who you are. And really, when somebody watches you or reads about you, that's only a one-way discussion. There's not full communication, a give and take with feedback and sometimes noise to address what you're trying to find out. Like I've said to you, you've got to ask those questions. And so demonstrating who you are as your personal brand is just the beginning. It's got to pique someone's interest. And then the real personal brand is when you engage with that person. and you show sincerity, you show genuineness, you show that you want to help them through your service or product, as long as you've identified that need.
Brilliant. And I would add to that that before doing business with you, most people will Google your name. Thank you so much, Trifone. That was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. I learned a lot. And we're going to pass now the baton to Kaspar Szymanski, which I know I said wrong, and he will be laughing at my terrible pronunciation, but he's not going to be laughing next week because he's going to be explaining to us how to grow organic rankings with brand, which obviously I find hugely interesting.
Right.
We just got a client whom I realized has increased their branded traffic by 20% in just 1 year, thanks to working with the Kalicube process. Please, could you pass the baton to Kaspar?
I can. Kaspar, I'll be tuning in, because this is not only something practical for me, it's something that I've done some research on and read that you're an authority. And if you're affiliated with Jason, you've got a great story to tell. So Kaspar, I'm excited. And beyond watching the podcast, that's only the first step. I'm going to get to understand your brand, what you have to say, but then the key is the follow-up. So perhaps you and I can do business together, and I'll know much more about what you do by watching the podcast. Congratulations, Jason, for landing Kaspar.
Always the salesman. Thank you so much, Ed. That was brilliant. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
Kalicube. It's all about your brand.